man, a very big man, living nice and easy in a very big house with a firepool, chicken run and lazy divert. A firepool, chicken run. But what's up, man? And how did he get those fans?
So, I don't consider myself a political person much at all. My main interest is in music, art, creativity, that kind of thing. But the current state of world affairs, and particularly here in South Africa, makes it almost impossible to not pay attention to what some of these crazy politicians are doing and saying. Although this letter was written a while ago, I'm just responding to something that Jacob Zuma wrote to Cyril Ramaphosa. If you can see in this article now, it says former President Jacob Zuma has written a scathing letter to his successor Cyril Ramaphosa, criticizing the current president for a letter he had written to ANC members about corruption. So here is I'm going to read some of this letter. I probably won't even get a quarter way through it just because I think it's such a bunch of horseshit. But I wanted to respond to what this genius of a previous president has said, as if he has a right to say anything, considering how he's driven this country into more corruption, more debt, further away from where we need to be than we've ever been before. And now we have a president who, I'm not saying is brilliant, but now has to recover from the low point that Zuma left us. So here he goes. Mr. President Ramaphosa, as one of the members of the ANC, I have also received your open letter written to all members of the ANC. It's indeed an unusual act by a leader of our movement. Given the nature and seriousness of the matters raised in your letter, I have decided to take unusual steps to respond to your letter in writing, which is something I'm not used to because I normally favor engaging discussion in our structures rather than writing a letter. So let's just stop right there. An unusual act by a leader of a movement. Okay, fine. Well, let's just put it this way. Unusual corruption requires unusual steps. So the fact that you're now starting to hide behind process in order to try and divert from the contents of Ramaphosa's letter, A, is pathetic, but in fact, your only method of defending yourself is not on content, but on process. So basically, go fuck yourself, Jacob Zuma. This is really not an issue. You are the one who created the conditions for this letter, which written by Ramaphosa, which actually should have been written like 15 years ago. Yeah. You and your cadre of sycophants and equally corrupt followers and people that have bought your services. You have elevated corruption to the level of state capture, from which we are going to take decades to recover from. Not even years, but decades. So go fuck yourself. So the most unusual aspect of this whole thing is how you made corruption possible at a massive scale. Now just go think about that and stop whining on about process here, because the so-called breach of process is literally a little pin job compared to the bullshit that you created. So this fake outrage that you and your followers are trying to create around process and around, being the victim, in the face of human rights violations, levels of corruption, you now want to argue internal process. Mr. President, like other members of the African National Congress, I received and read your letter 23rd August 2020. Although I write in my capacity as an ordinary member of ANC, I'm mindful of the fact that as former president of ANC, it may be unprecedented that I write a letter of this nature. Well, okay, we've already been through this. So you writing a response to Cyril Ramaphosa's letter is probably unprecedented, but everything you've done before that is equally unprecedented in terms of the levels of corruption you've involved yourself in. However, I'm of the firm view that issues you raised in the letter are indeed serious and deserve our attention as members of the ANC. Oh, wow. Okay, so here we have fake concern for conditions that you created. So go screw yourself. Mr. President, I address this private letter to you as President of the ANC, and I request to share with the entire leadership as well as structures of our movement. I do not seek to address my own president and organization to the media or public letters, as this would be foreign to a well-established culture of the ANC. Well, okay, well-established culture ANC. At some point, that included being freedom fighters. But under your watch, the well-established culture of the ANC became one about corruption, patronage, and self-service. So, I don't know. What are you saying here? Foreign to well-established culture of the ANC? Well, some of the well-established culture of the ANC needs to be looked at very hard. And by the way, not by you. You need to be in jail. I write it not to attack a person, but to engage in constructive, honest debate that our movement always encourages. Really? Honest debate. You're an autocrat, and you're a jackal, and you're a snake. I also hope that my letter will be kept as internal communication director, leadership, and the entire membership. So I'm actually just going to stop right there for now. And I want to just take a sideways step here. Because one thing that's happened more and more, and this is not just Jacob Zuma, but it's EFF, BLF, or whoever, create this fake kind of black nationalism to cover for their corruption. fake black nationalism and fake progressive politics. Because nothing about what Jacob Zuma has done has been progressive. It's all been retrogressive, and it's taken us 10 steps back for half a step forward. If we look at the fundamental levels of corruption and the service delivery that hasn't happened, the money that's been siphoned off to the Guptas, and the list is endless. And that's not to say just how you have corrupted the institutions of South Africa for your own personal patronage. Anyway, I think this article by Imran Bukas in the Daily Maverick actually says, he's talking here about the EFF, but it covers more than just the EFF. South African politics is a strange beast and unique in the world in one important respect. Here the genuine left has no representation in parliament, but many neoliberals and all of the kleptocrats misrepresent themselves as the left. This indicates that left ideas have real support in society, even though there is no genuine left party in parliament. Since the height of state capture era, the kleptocrats in the ANC have misrepresented themselves as pro-poor, quote-unquote, and genuinely progressive. The kleptocrats in the ANC, okay? Not just EFF or not other parties, but the kleptocrats in the ANC misrepresent themselves as pro-poor and genuinely progressive. This includes Zuma. This includes a whole long list of arseholes who pretending to be pro-poor when in fact they're just kleptocrats. Had no more than a superficial caring for people of South Africa, but actually only give a damn about themselves. So they have tried to argue that popular outrage against looting is really a front for reactionary forces that oppose the left. Let me read this again. They have tried to argue that the popular outrage against looting is really a front for reactionary forces that oppose the left. This is a joke. And I'm just going to say this is an understatement. This is more than just a joke. All the major organizations of the poor and the working class oppose the looters, and the poor got significantly poorer under Jacob Zuma. To make matters worse, the Marikana massacre and the assassination of a number of grassroots activists happened under Zuma. His regime was both massively corrupt and seriously authoritarian. The kleptocrats in the EFF, who enrich themselves by stealing from the poor via VBS, also present themselves as left. The EFF's stated program is that of extremely statist and authoritarian left. But in reality, the EFF has indulged its corrupt leaders and aligned itself with the kleptocrats in the ANC. To call this a left project would be a joke. Black First Land First, another authoritarian group which aggressively provided crude support for Zuma and the Guptas and launched scurrilous attacks on critics of Zuma and the Guptas, also presents itself as left. This is farcical. Okay, so let me just stop there for now. But basically the EFF, BLF, these people are Gucci socialists, and I think that pretty much sums them up. They're kind of socialist in name, but in reality they're more interested in the Gucci lifestyle than they are in socialism. But bottom line is Jacob Zuma is part of that whole scam. He's a Gucci socialist of the worst order who literally has destroyed South Africa and just South Africa's ability to feed its population, to house its population, to resolve its fundamental structural issues. Basically, because of the level of corruption he's indulged in and he's allowed, and the state institutions he's actively worked to undermine, and then at the end of it pretending to be a black nationalist who gives a damn about the people. And yes, there's people support him, and all I can say to you is fuck you Zuma and fuck those people who support you, because honestly you shouldn't be writing lessons because you deserve to be in jail while the adults in the room get on with recovering from the mess that you created.